Hi, this is Joni Sweetland. Welcome to the Strong Women, Stronger World podcast, where each episode we interview different leaders to help accelerate your leadership learning, challenge you to take risks to advance your own career, and teach you how to lead from inside out. My comments and insights are based on my own experience, which span a 27-year career in global management consulting, including 18 as a partner. This podcast is meant to inspire and empower you to action. It is time to step into your power. The world needs more women leaders. Together, we are strong. Strong women, stronger world. Our topic today is staying power, how to keep employees longer, with our special guest, Cara Silletto. Do you often compare your staffing situation to a revolving door? Do you wish your managers knew how to deal with millennials? Are you looking for innovative ideas on how to retain the talent we can't afford to lose? If you're ready for a new approach, you're in the right place. Retention expert Cara Silletto was named a game changer by Workforce Magazine. Recruiter.com listed her in their top 10 company culture experts to watch. She's the author of the new book, Staying Power: Why Your Employees Leave and How to Keep Them Longer. And her MBA allows her to quantify the cost and issues caused by excessive employee turnover today. As the president and chief retention officer at Magnet Culture, Cara works with clients across the country to reduce their unnecessary employee turnover. Please join me in welcoming workforce thought leader, tackler of turnover, and an entitled millennial herself, Cara Silletto. Welcome, Cara, to the show.
Hello. Thanks so much, Joni. So glad to be
Oh,
here.
we're delighted to have you. And I'm just so excited about this topic. And let's start, Cara, with a little bit about your background and journey and what led you to focus on retention.
Sure. So I started my business just with general business consulting about 9 years ago. And I was trying to solve a business problem. I had coaches and mentors that said, you have to solve a business problem, so keep your ears open. And so many people were complaining about millennials. So at first I happened to be one of the oldest millennials. I was born in 1981. And I have a lot of the battle scars from my 20s of being one of the first millennials in the workplace. And I didn't know I was so different. They didn't understand what planet I was from. Lots of battles. Why do you do it that way? Well, work smarter, not harder, things like that I was bringing to the table. So anyway, I started to tell my story about being a millennial in the workplace and what this new generation looked like, started building our business around that. Then we realized that the actual problem we were solving beyond just bridging the generational gaps was reducing employee turnover by helping those managers better understand the new workforce and then adjust in order to retain. So we started doing more retention work around why do people leave? How do you keep them longer? Not just the generational component, but better onboarding, better leadership, et cetera, et cetera. And now we are coast to coast with clients in all different industries around helping them identify why staff really leave, not just for more money. And then, of course, making their managers more effective and creating ways to keep people longer.
Wow. Well, I know right now that as the talent war intensifies, right? You just mentioned, why are employees leaving? What is it is it the money? Is it a higher salary? Or what is really driving employees to jump ship?
Yeah. So certainly money can play a factor. Oftentimes people are going to say that they're just leaving for a better offer or more money, something like that. But if you look at the data, study after study shows that a lot of people won't even entertain other offers if they're happy, if they feel valued, if they feel appreciated, if they feel that sense of belonging on their team, if they have a strong relationship with their leader and feel that they're kept in the know and that they all have pretty good communication with one another and whatnot. So yes, too often I hear companies claim that everyone's leaving for $1 more an hour or for a couple grand more that they'll go somewhere. And if we're talking about big dollars, tech companies and other industries that are paying significant amounts of money to people, close to six figures or over six figures, then a lot of times, absolutely money talks, 5, 10, 20 grand here and there. But with the lower wage workers, they often very much value that, again, the belonging on the team, really strong leader that they are loyal to. They're not going to be loyal to the company as much as they're loyal to that particular leader who believes in them, has invested their time and energy into, that helps develop them, and also wanting to work with people they enjoy, that kind of their work friends type of thing is really, really big. But what has happened is over the years, because of not only recessions and just bottom line focus area, but we've kept squeezing our people to do more with less, do more with less. And the workloads then just got totally out of whack. Let's be honest, most people who should have a 40-hour-a-week job are working far more than that. They're carrying a person and a half or two people's responsibilities, if we looked at it candidly, And so how in the world does anyone have time to manage appropriately? It's near impossible to have that one-on-one time, get to know people. We preach all the time, one size no longer fits all. But you got to have time to manage that way. So there's just a lot of factors going into it. But there's a lot of the issues that I'm seeing over and over.
Wow, there's a lot in there that you just really shed a light on. And I want to go back initially to what you talked about in helping your employees feel valued, that sense of belongingness. And we're in this crazy pandemic at the moment where, managers and leaders are trying to lead remotely in lots of cases. Some have been able to go back, a lot have not. And so what can these managers do, especially in a remote environment, to really instill that how valued their employees are and that they care? Any tips you can share with our listeners?
Yeah, absolutely. So for more than 8 years now, I've had a completely virtual team. So I was doing this, leading my team on camera long before the pandemic hit. And my staff is all around the country. So they're on different time zones and different states and whatnot. And I have absolutely made a couple things a priority. One is to truly check in with my people when I contact them. It is not all about business, right? We make time for that and we certainly get to the goals of the meeting, but I almost always start the meetings very purposefully with, how was your weekend? Hey, how's your kiddo doing? Hey, I saw your dog had that cone thing on Facebook. Like, is your dog okay? Whatever it is, just really kind of checking in with them, not checking on them. Well, what's the status of this project and this thing, but hey, how are things going? Totally, even took it to another level with the pandemic of, how are you doing? We got schools shut down. We've got elderly parents we're worried about, all kinds of things that are taking up our time and mental space now. So really checking in with people, especially if you have one-on-one calls with them, to say, hey, before we get started on this project stuff, just wanted to check in and see if there's anything I can do for you, anything you need or want to talk about or whatnot, is really critical. And I've honestly thought that we should be doing that in the workplace as well. Yes. more check-ins with our people, right? And I heard a story recently that just gave me goosebumps of a company who had been forced to work from home for the first 6 or 8 months of the pandemic. And then in the fall, they decided we can come back to the office with safety protocols in place. And one of the employees said to the manager, during the pandemic, you've been calling me every week and checking on me and talking to me one-on-one. If I come back to the office, are you still going to do that? Because they didn't before. That person felt like they didn't have access to their manager and that their manager wasn't approachable for one-on-one time because they were so busy, right? People are so busy. And so I just want that to kind of sink in with people of, are you really approachable, and do your people feel like you have the time and energy for them? Because that's important remotely, even more so, but also even when you're in the same room or the same building.
I think that is such a great tip for our leaders, is just creating the time and space to care, to just get curious and to care and check in, whether you're remote, whether you are back already working in the workplace itself, but remembering to carve out strategically that time to really help be that glue, that stickiness for your employees.
Yeah, that's a great word for it. Be the glue.
Be the
And that will
glue.
help. That will help retain them, that you are the glue. We use the MAGNET acronym all the time. My company, Magnet Culture, is really focused on being the glue and being attractive and really holding on to the people that you don't want to lose. You have to proactively be that glue.
Yes. Okay. So that we are definitely going to be the glue for sure. Okay. So, we talked a little bit about, or you mentioned a little bit about being in the know. So, what can managers and leaders do just to make sure that their team is in the know? As you mentioned, we're all busy. We're moving sometimes, 100 miles an hour. How do we keep everyone informed and in the know?
Yeah, it is tough, especially with a lot of moving parts. I use a concept that I call cascade, and it just means to make sure that the information gets cascaded down or around, maybe the same level as you or above you or whatnot, but that things get cascaded out to the right people. So when I learned that strategy, I put the word cascade on several Post-it notes, and I put them everywhere on my laptop, my desk, my mirror, that type of behavior change to get in a natural state of doing that regularly. It takes time to remember and get used to that. So the Post-it notes helped. But the thing that should come to mind for you if you want to get better at cascading and better at communicating is, who needs to know what just happened? So after any important phone call, an important meeting, an important email that you get, stop for a moment, after that's over, and say, okay, who needs to know what just happened? Was there somebody missing from the meeting that needs to be kept in the loop? Is there going to be an impact on someone or a department or a role that we need to make sure we get that out to? And also, I tend to over communicate with my team because I want the left hand to know what the right hand is doing. So also on my one-on-one meetings or team meetings, I'll start with, hey, how was your weekend? And then I'll give them a couple updates. Hey, just wanted you guys to know that, so-and-so is working on this new project over here. So you may hear some stuff about that, and let us know if you have any thoughts or questions or anything. And then also at my staff meetings, we always do a round robin. So every person gets to go around quickly. They might take 30 seconds, they might take 2 or 3 minutes to talk about what they're working on. And then that helps keep everybody in the know of who's doing what. Then we don't typically have complaints about, I didn't know that was going on, but you have to be proactive in making sure that information is crossing over roles and departments and even locations if you have multiple locations.
Excellent. These are some great tips. So we're going to keep cascading in mind.
Yes.
And just making sure who needs to know what. So I think that is a great way, again, to really have your employees feel that they are up to speed, up to date, and we always want to be in the know. So it's a
Mm-hmm.
great reminder, I think, for our leaders and managers. All right, so we have to go to this. I just need to understand what all these challenges are that's going on between the boomers, the Gen Xers, the millennials, the Gen Z. What can you share with us around these challenges and how that also plays into retention?
Sure. So, as I said, for years, I focused my whole business on these generational dynamics. And a lot of it comes down to people were raised differently. And yet we expect the people around us to have a similar outlook on life that we do. For example, things like professionalism and work ethic. Those two phrases are subjective. It is your opinion whether you believe that my purple hair, which, yes, if you're listening on podcast, I do actually have purple hair, whether you believe my purple hair is appropriate or inappropriate, or professional or unprofessional. Today I see this judgment everywhere. People think that if somebody works more hours than me, they're a workaholic and they need to get a life. But if they work less hours than me, they have no work ethic. That type of judgment that's happening. So I see a lot of the judgment from a generational standpoint because the previous generations were taught to be loyal for loyalty's sake. As far as you make a commitment, you stick it out. That's your word. But that was back in the day when there were a lot of pensions. There were not mass layoffs before the 1990s, really. Those were very few and far between before the 1990s. In fact, the Bureau of Labor Statistics started tracking mass layoffs in 1995. Wow. So it just wasn't even a big thing on employees' radars before the 90s. But as a child, as a millennial growing up with my parents who were baby boomers, I saw my mom get laid off time and time again. Because when the internet came into the work world and caused globalization, that is when more companies started offshoring, outsourcing, centralizing, decentralizing. Right. One day she got a call and said, we're going to put the whole accounting department, which is what she did. We're going to move all of our accounting for the whole company up to Green Bay. So you still have a job if you're willing to go to Green Bay. But we were already cold enough where we were in Indiana. So we're certainly not moving farther north. And so that gave me a whole different perspective as a kid to see my hardworking mom who got stellar performance reviews come home with the box, all her stuff from her desk and just tears rolling down her face. So she got laid off actually 3 times before I graduated high school. Wow. And then another 2 times since then. So I was taught, unlike her upbringing of you should stick it out when you make a commitment and, you should be lucky to have that job and things like that. My mom told me, don't ever depend on a company because they can cut you any day. So she actually said, and this is a little bit extreme, but this was how I was raised. She said, Cara, once your salary, consider any hour worked over 40 a donation to your company because they owe you nothing for that. And so you can imagine I had a little different employer-employee relationship.
Oh my goodness.
Exactly. So that's kind of where it comes from. I've done a lot of writing in my books and whatnot about the different generational upbringings. And it's really important for managers to understand that different mindset that your workers come to the table with instead of just judging them and saying, well, they have no loyalty. Well, have you ever asked why? Have you ever dug into the backstory of why they're so entitled and really want to focus on work-life balance more than previous generations? It's all out there if you ask the right questions and look.
Wow, I think that really is an important element of getting into the retention, understanding the mindsets and what motivates your employees, because those perspectives can be
Exactly.
very different from your own. Another reason I think to get curious, right, as our managers and
Yes.
leaders. Um, you did mention something that I think is really important right now around layoffs as we think about the pandemic right now and how many people have been impacted by
Hmm.
layoffs, and just for not for personal reasons, but purely for economic reasons. And then there are those employees that were furloughed, and then some got called back, some got laid off. And then for the ones who get called back, these are individuals that are now expected to pick up the slack of several people.
Yeah.
I'm just curious as, what advice you might have to leaders and managers now in those situations where they have to do, more with less. But
Hmm.
this pandemic is not going to last forever. There is going to be, hopefully, a light coming here at the end of the tunnel, and this too shall
Yeah.
pass. So what advice do you have given this type of situation with the layoffs and then, really expecting people to work two or three people's jobs? What's going to
Hmm.
happen here?
Yeah, a couple things come to mind. First things first, appreciate the hell out of those people that are coming back and doing two or three jobs to keep things afloat. You need to just praise them like crazy and thank them for taking on these special duties and whatnot. And of course, some people are going to say, "Well, I don't have the ability to do this, Kara," but you have got to fight to get the roles back or fight to get the workloads reduced. You have got to have a plan. Companies have got to have a plan of, okay, as things pick back up revenue wise, for
Mhm.
example, which roles are we bringing back? What's the plan for that? How are we going to get back to where we were? Or if revenue doesn't pick up, or even if it does, but we've decided to just shrink this team down, what is coming off of their plates? Because I'm telling y'all right now, it's not sustainable. The whole model of do more with less, that's supposed to get people through a tough
Yeah.
time. That's not supposed to be a business model for life or for even 5 or 10 years. Because if we're so focused on that bottom line and every quarterly result or monthly goal, it's going to burn out your people, who then your subject matter experts and your great workers are going to leave. And then you've got to start over with somebody who's inexperienced or has at least a learning curve and needs time to get to full productivity. So you've really just kind of shot yourself in the foot
Yes.
by by working them too hard and pushing them away. So I, as a leader, am hyper focused on the workload of my people because that's one of the things about my culture that I've built with my organization. I don't want people working more hours than what we promised them at the beginning or what
Mhm.
we requested and they promised to us. So I'm hyper focused on what are your priorities? What do I need to get off your
Mhm.
plate? That's how I determine my staffing model for do I need to hire someone else if other people are getting overloaded?
Right.
And I really think that companies and managers need to take a much closer look at what realistic workloads look like these days and how sustainable is this do more with less and we have to just hunker down and take on as much as we can because folks can't do that
I think
forever.
this is brilliant advice. So
Yeah.
starting with what you talked about, bringing that gratitude, being thankful for these
Yes.
people that are really picking up the slack in the short term.
Mhm.
But then starting to have a plan and to fight for those roles. And, as things pick up and become more economically advantaged for the organization, to be able to lessen that workload and just be acutely aware of the workload
Mhm.
we're asking our employees
Yep.
to take on. I think that's really great advice. And what are you working on now, Cara? What's next, like in the field of retention? I'm excited to
Yeah.
hear.
Yeah, so right now I'm doing a lot of research and writing and speaking and training on Really the disconnect that I'm finding that we have, particularly if you have lower wage frontline workers. So the lower the wages, the bigger the disconnect typically is between the leaders and their front line. But even with educated and skilled workers, sometimes even if you're an engineering firm or something like that that has skilled people, over time, we just become so focused on the business and the bottom line and the productivity and profitability and things like that, that sometimes we lose sight of the daily lives and what we consider the reality of the front line. This year in particular, we had huge issues with the schools being shut down. And all of a sudden, how does a CEO who possibly has a stay-at-home spouse, for example, or has, had a stay-at-home spouse when their children were young and they didn't have to worry about childcare and they could work late and be a workaholic and grow their career. Well, now you've got an engineer or a medical tech or whatever job that is. You've got a frontline worker whose spouse is also working. And now we've got schools shut down. So I don't care if you're male or female, I got to help out here. I've got to, figure out how to manage a 6 and an 8-year-old running around while I'm working from home or, getting on these e-learning calls or whatnot. And it's not just about the schools and the people with children, because of course there's other workers that don't have children, but we also have, as mentioned earlier, folks dealing with elderly or sick parents, that sandwich generation type of thing, and just other priorities around their community and things like that. So I want to make sure my next book, my new work that I'm working on now is really about making sure leaders stay connected with their front line and that they don't get too far removed. A lot of my clients have low wage frontline workers, and I'll tell you, the people in management and above, they don't even live in the same neighborhood, Joni.
Wow.
They do not live in the same part of town as their workers. They don't go to the same schools as their workers' kids go to. They really live almost a different life, different priorities, different struggles. When the price of gas goes up, here's a good example. When the price of gas goes up, do you really care, or do you just fill up your tank? If you're, management and above, you probably notice and go, man, gas is getting kind of pricey. And you still just pop your credit card in and fill up your tank. But when you're low wage frontline workers, or even a skilled worker that makes good money, but they've got a lot of bills with kids and, rent and whatever else, right? Even car payments and things like that. When the price of gas goes up, that could impact their daily choices and their stress and keep them up at night because they have to walk inside the gas station and put 10 or 20 bucks in their tank and hope that it lasts them until the next paycheck, So just really getting in tune with that reality of the day-to-day struggles and priorities of your frontline workforce, whatever that looks like, that can make you a much stronger leader and help retain workers, right? That's why we're focusing on it, is because we need to make sure that disconnect isn't happening with the clients that we're working with. Otherwise, they'll just see more and more talent walk out the door.
What incredible work that you're focused on, Cara, the just staying connected with your frontline workers. And as I think about this, such an important lesson for our leaders who are listening around continue to invest in your people. And part of that is really putting yourself in their shoes and understanding, what a day in the life is for, your employees. And I think that your work in this is really going to make a difference and an impact in the world. So that is some awesome. Okay. So Cara, I ask every one of our guests on the show to answer our keystone question. What makes you feel strong?
What makes me feel strong? I feel strong when I know my own strengths, that I know where I should be spending my time and what value I bring to the table, and that I have surrounded myself with people, personally or professionally, who fill the gaps, right? so that I don't bear the burden so much of the weaknesses or the things that I know I'm not good at, but I focus on those strengths and then surround myself with those who can like build a more holistic team and a holistic approach to things, because I can't fill everything. I can't be everything to everyone.
Beautiful.
So that makes me feel
Oh,
strong.
love that strength. That is beautiful. Well, Cara, I can't thank you enough for being a guest on our show today.
Yeah, thanks,
And
Joni.
also, I want to say thank you to all of our listeners. And we hope that you are now empowered with all of these great tips for all the staying power. And we encourage you to step into your leadership. Thank you for listening. If you are interested in supporting this content, please hit the subscribe button. This will help to bring much needed funding to bring quality programming to our listeners like you. Your support is greatly appreciated. We encourage you to leave comments. If you have suggestions for leadership topics, please provide those in the comments and we will strive to address those in upcoming episodes. It is time to step into your power. The world needs your leadership. Together we are strong. Strong women, stronger world.